Hi, everybody.
Five. Go. Oh
Hi.
no!
What? Nothing. I didn't do
Okay,
anything. All right, folks.
five, and then she ghosted us. Okay.
We're happy to be here. We've had a little technical difficulty. I have, but Bret Lueder has been very patient with his elder women in our group. We have an Ascension community, Ascension Center network with Janet Kira Lessin, Aquarian Radio, and Janet Kira Lessin at gmail.com. And Bret Lueder is Belu at Proton Mail if you're interested in talking to him. They're both on Facebook with many of us. And one of our stars of our group and our spiritual community globally is Star Fuentes. And she couldn't join us today. So we're welcoming her in the future. So she likes our show. She likes us, and she likes hearing the three of us talk. And she's been learning, and she's a wonderful teacher. She teaches 49 classes or so, and she did one last week, and she's in Hot Springs, Arkansas. Now, Bret Lueder is one of our journalists. He's actually has a degree in journalism. He's an author, and we'll be talking about our Authors Club organization and our ACO Association for authors, consultants, and oracles with all of us that we do this open source intelligence. And Janet Lessin has some questions today on intelligence. And Bret Lueder has been studying Ascended Masters. And between all of us, we've all been contactee experiencers on one way or another. And I'd like to talk about tachyon energy, tachyon beings, and thoughts. Where do they come from? And what are these non physical reality things that people are talking about now, not only in the third dimension, but in the fifth dimension? So a lot of people are talking about all that. So we'll start like we always do with hello world. Welcome aboard, all you ground troops spinning around smartly on the plane. Bret Lueder blinked on and off again. Janice laughing. God bless her. She's over in Maui, Hawaii, and producing Texas.
Teresa
And
keep
the
Teresa
whole
keep
thing blinks
teleporting.
on and off. I don't know if it's the 5G connection here in Texas or what. I've never had this much in Kentucky, but I don't know. It's 5G coming into the house, I guess. So I apologize. It keeps flashing on and off. You'll see that with your bars on your smartphones come on and off. I don't know what's causing it, but let's get started. Janet, Kira Lessin, and Bret Lueder, you want to take turns us talking about, we'll get this, we're going to have our own narrative. We have the unexplained truth of our existence and why we show up here and what we're building together as TJ3B.
Keeps moving.
Okay. She can't sit still, and now Brett's scratching. And so Bret Lueder talked
All
for a
right.
minute.
What's the first question, TJ? Ask Brett a question. He wants to wake up.
Bret Lueder needs to wake up. Bret Lueder, you have been a great event planner and event coordinator, and we've been talking a lot about people that we know still alive on the planet. And I discovered Harold, which Harold's always with us on this show. I don't know why, but he is probably an ascended master now. But he used to speak for us, and he worked in Atlantis, and his past life memory was one of those people of the group with Elizabeth Clare Prophet, and he was the actual custodian. So, Bret Lueder, you've been up there in that area. Tell people about California and what Harold did over there for the location of the Mount Shasta people, and
Okay.
give them an idea about the Ascended Masters.
Okay. Yeah. So I've studied many spiritual traditions, and Harold founded this law study group in Chico, California, in I think around '95, and there was four big guys that started it. He was Harold, Jim Mullen, Bill Baker, and John Van Auken, and they became kind of the elders of this group. And so when I joined that group in 2005 in Chico, I got led there by a friend of mine who said, "You just got to meet these people." I had some trouble in Washington State with the traffic ticket, and they were really trying to just railroad me. Okay, like they took at the time I'd smoked marijuana and I had like an ounce of marijuana, less than an ounce, and they took it, put it in a plastic bag, my plastic bag inside of their plastic bag, taped it up, and then put it in a bigger plastic bag and taped it up, and said it was over a pound, and I was an interstate drug trafficker.
Ooh.
And so so that was my introduction to the law study group, and that's when I got to meet Harold. Harold, what a unique individual this guy was. He had been studying the Ascended Masters for a long time. He was frustrated with mainstream religion, studied Christianity for a long time, became, kind of disillusioned by the industry of religion in America, which I can't blame him. When you see guys like Joel Osteen and others just living in giant mansions, and then around them is poverty, and it's just hypocritical. And so I can kind of see his point. So he found the Ascended Masters and started studying that route. And that goes back to Helena Blavatsky and Isis Unveiled, and I forget the other, Secret Doctrine, I think, is her other book. And that kind of laid the foundation of these Ascended Masters that supposedly have been laying low for a long time, and only people in secret societies in the East and West had been contacting these beings. And so it's kind of on the hush hush for, I don't know how many hundreds, or who knows, maybe thousands of years, as these secret teachings would be passed on within these secret groups, like the Freemasons or the Rosicrucians. Or, in Asia, they have, traditions of Shambhala or Patala in India, these underground civilizations where supposedly these Ascended Masters have their societies. And so the idea is that these Ascended Masters were beings like us on Earth, who lived in the physical bodies and then were able to shed their negative baggage. Harold would say you had to transmute your negative energy with the violet flame so that you could kind of climb this ladder of different initiations as you're going up. Supposedly the highest initiation on Earth is the 8th level, and that's the Lord of the World, Sanat Kumara, is what the Ascended Masters call him, at least in the West. And that leads to a bunch of controversy. I'll get to that in a second. But so Blavatsky kind of brought that stuff out. That stuff, I think, was more well known in the East before it kind of broke open in the West. And it really broke open in the West in the 1920s when Guy Ray Ballard reportedly had a meeting with a very tall, good-looking gentleman on the slopes of Mount Shasta by the name of Saint Germain. And that guy himself has a interesting history. He supposedly goes back over 400 years. There's supposedly reports of Saint Germain visiting royal courts in Europe, 300 plus years ago, and transmuting lead into gold. And so that whole story by itself is hugely fascinating. And the idea that he transmuted or was able to defeat death. And so I'll just wrap this up real quick, and then we'll answer your question, Janet. And so that tradition's broken itself up into like 5 or 6 different traditions here in the West. You mentioned, TJ mentioned Mark and Elizabeth Clare Prophet and the Summit Lighthouse, I think it's called. Then there's the Heart Center with David Lewis, who supposedly channels Saint Germain. And there's several others. And that's kind of where we are today, is that these different schools are talking about the various Ascended Masters, what their roles are in helping wake humanity up to their own true spiritual power and putting them back on the path towards ascension, which is supposedly all of our goal. That's it in a nutshell.
Very good, Bret. Janet, you wanted to ask a question?
Well, I just wanted to add something. So Saint Germain is supposed to be Enki, and Enki was last seen going into Mount Shasta, which we started talking about Mount Shasta. Mount Shasta has an underground city, but it has the gateway to they call it a railway system. It's a transportation system which goes underneath the whole planet, and it goes all the way over to Montauk and down to Shambhala. So anyway, so there's a correlation there with Enki and Saint Germain. And so you said about, what did he do? He worked with gold or something?
He was an alchemist, among other things.
Right.
And supposedly that's the metaphor of alchemy, is transmuting lead into gold.
Right.
Like if you study William Henry stuff, that's a metaphor for transforming the iron or lead of the human physical body into its light body. That
Right.
kind of thing. So, yeah.
So I studied with the White Brotherhood when I was in state college. All these little communities have these spiritual groups. So that was their spiritual group. And there were 2 college professors that had us meet at their house, and they played this this meditation tape for about a half an hour, 45 minutes. And then we were supposed to meditate every day for like 15, 20 minutes at the same time. So I've always had men that cooked for me. So my second husband would, after we get home from work, he was cooking dinner. I've been blessed. And like my current husband's an amazing chef. Anyway, so he was good. John was a good cook. And so while he was doing that, I would meditate. And after a year of meditating, based on the white brotherhood, the Masters, Ascended Masters, I started getting a download of all my past lives spontaneously at night when I was dreaming. Oh. And I had like 6 incarnations come to me, and I've been able to correlate and tie in with in my tree with a couple of them. And so I was just blown away because I was going, Ascended Masters, what's that? Some hippie new age stuff. And here it was actually working. And during the meditation, I was getting like these visions of past lives. So it was really effective. So if you got an Ascended Masters group and you're really into it, it might be worth checking out. Now, and I'll just add one more thing. So when I went to Honolulu, and there was your spiritual center, there was a wonderful man named Arthur Pacheco, and he was a channeler. And he was channeling some of the Ascended Masters. So he would actually become like Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, right? His face would change, and he sounded just. They even recorded him, and then they would play the recordings of Arthur Conan Doyle next to Arthur Pacheco when he was channeling, and it sounded just like him. So it was like, so I don't know. There's a big mystery there, but I've had fun exploring it. I've been doing this since Edgar Casey in the 60s and Eric Von Daniken. So I've been studying this since I'm 70 years old. So I was basically 14, 15, 16, and I had an older brother 7 years older, and I was just like forcing my dad to take me to the bookstore and buy everything that came in. So there was Ruth Montgomery, and basically not much back then. Just one little tiny section on the shelf was UFO and paranormal books. So I'll pass it back to. So Theresa, what brought you? What makes you want to talk about the Ascended Master today? Have you had any kind of contact?
Sure.
Because last night and like almost once a week, I have this thing where I'm in class, and it's like, who are you talking to? I don't know. It's like it's some kind of class. Oh, here she goes. So I'm in class. And it seems like it could be, in a meditation class with the White Brotherhood, they said, once you work with the White Brotherhood, they're always with you the rest of your life. So that was 35, 40 years ago. So maybe that's who I'm talking to. So back to you, Theresa. What are your thoughts and comments on the Ascended Masters?
Well, once we've talked about them, they're here. So 2 or more gathered in his name, which you wanted to bring to the fact that we do TJ3B now as our show together, and going forward for sharing not just cosmology and metaphysics, but in the paranormal world, but talking about ETs, UFOs, UAPs. And all of that goes with their ascension masters, because all of those can come and go in any form or fashion. But from what we understand historically, those that have been visited is all the great masters, including Jesus, which is the one most of us know as white Anglo-Saxon Protestants of the Christian faith, is we're blending all those. And a lot of the people in the New Age community were all about trying to understand all world religions while we were going to the universities in the 70s and 80s. And all these great stories were coming out about people that could walk the earth. And those included Saint Germain and the Violet Flame and Melchizedek, and the things that happened when we got to talk to angels and our guides. So I was very involved after I was ordained in the pyramid in Houston in 1985, Gold Pyramid, when Stephen Halpert came, and I was looking forward to talking to Star, who is a trance channeler and a very good healer, and she's healing herself right now. She's been working with so many people. Sometimes our bodies will slow us down a little bit because we'll take on as empaths that DNA enhancement from others. They're letting it go, and sometimes it attaches to us. So, one thing we do with the Ascended Masters is we teach people to level up. And I was trained in the Ascension Master classes and taught them as I was asked to back in the 80s and 89, 94 when you met me at Spiritual World Network and Psychic Network. And Spiritual World Network was at Hilton Hawaii Kiki. And so I'm going to write about that because we've come so far. There was no Ascension type metaphysical books back at that time. There was only one. And that gentleman I knew, and I was very shocked because the meetings would be no coincidence. So, just like in the UFO world, we have the men in black, in the spiritual world, we have the Ascension Masters. So, there are beings that come and go with no explanation unless one has a vibration or a energy level. It's like leveling up an understanding in a video game. You can't reach that until something ignites in your DNA or in your space for you to upgrade and be able to see these things. Now, children come in and can see many things anyway, but gradually we get told they don't exist and we stop practicing and it goes away. But the Ascension Masters, I had to learn how to believe in them. Baba Ji came to me when I was channeling and writing in Hawaii, and I didn't know who Baba Ji was. So that was somebody that is a very well-known teacher. I was very blessed. So that led me on to learning about channels of the Ascension Master level to bring me. He was from India and a very great spokesperson, yogi teacher, Swami. I don't know how many lives Baba Ji has had, but I was one of there's many called by Babaji. And so I took this to the older lady in our eldership group in Hawaii, and she told me I was called. And she said, "Have you been mentioned? Have you had anybody talking about the Great White Brotherhood or any of the people of the Allied Council or the Federation or anything?" And at that time, I told her about I was psychic, and so she had me read the room, and a gentleman came in from South America, and she wanted to test me in front of witnesses in the Hawaii group, and they all knew the masters. As a matter of fact, I'll show you real quick. This is our Ascension Center from Hawaii. It's very old, but this is the book. It's very thick, and it's people like this is like a grimoire. You'll hear it said today, grimoire, but it's really grimoire. And then the sayings and teachings of many people and masters that have come before and certain channelings that I've been able to decipher and get. So nowadays the kids are talking not just in the way that we talked about ascended masters and guides, but they're getting their own higher direction and they don't know what to call them. So in the spiritual world, there's beings that come and go, and I think now science is going to recognize the thoughts that we have that come and go, that we can also materialize in the third dimension. We just don't know how to do that since we're death and dying at this level in 3D. So part of the 5D jump is to learn how the whole entire world and planet jumps into the next realm together. If we get enough people in that level of thinking, not just a positive timeline, a positive vibration, and getting people to really level up. And that's why we're pushing awareness of consciousness and the ascension. And that was brought together by many people called the Ascension Masters. So there's a whole picture, there's a big picture you can see and study the Ascended Masters and pick it up on Wikipedia, and also the non-physical reality of beings and thoughts. So I'm going to go back to Bret Lueder. You got questions or you want to talk about that?
Well, I'm definitely a student of myself. And as a student of myself, I've studied many different traditions. What I find fascinating about the split between, say, Christianity or even mystical Christianity, not to talk about the mainstream, because I think that's just a money-making industry. Man has really done a lot to really ruin what religion is or what the original teachings of Jesus were, and then the Ascended Master traditions. They differ in a couple basic areas, and one is that Jesus, for the Ascended Masters, Jesus is one of many different Ascended Masters that you could pray to or talk to or channel. Whereas in Christianity, they say Jesus is the way, right? Basically. And so I've tried to reconcile that difference in my own way because I know really good people on both sides of that debate. Harold, who you mentioned before, would be one of those on the Ascended Master side, and he was frustrated with the Christianity part of it. I know people on the Christianity side that say that Ascended Master stuff is really demonic. And so looking at both those sides and trying to figure out what's really going on, what I came up with was that since discernment on Earth is super tricky for a human, I think if they're hypothetically, let's just play that there's this enemy, okay? And this Lucifer has fallen angels or demons, archons, lower astral entities, whatever you want to call them. They don't like humans very much. So if there was this opposition, so say the light versus the dark, just to simplify, what would that look like in terms of an actual battle that we could perceive as humans with our difficulty of discernment? And so then I came across this book called The Art of War by Sun Tzu, which isn't really one guy. It's really a collection of generals over hundreds, if not thousands of years in China, where they're mapping out the relationships between human beings coming from a situation of battle, but it also turns out it applies to business or love relationships or friend relationships. It involves human relationships. And so, I think this is why God made me an athlete, because from a really young age, I played soccer and some other sports. I perceived how to defeat my enemy. And that's exactly that situation that we're all in right now. So if we have an enemy that does not like humanity and is trying to keep us from the process of ascension, which I firmly believe is happening, then they're going to want to study all the strengths of their opponent, us, and block our strengths and then attack our weaknesses. And that's exactly what I see happening. So if God creates everything, God creates magic, God creates astrology and the Kabbalah and numerology and all these things that the Christian side says are demonic. And yoga, the Baha'is, there's a whole martial arts, there's a whole list of stuff that they see as demonic, at least certain factions, right? There's differences among the factions of Christianity. And so what I came up with was that, okay, but God created all those things. So what's going on here? How could those be demonic if God created? Did God create stuff to be demonic? No, I don't think so at all. I think God wants the best for all his creation, right? He doesn't want poverty and suffering and war and toxicity and pollution. He wants the best. He or she, whatever metaphor you want to use, God wants the best for his humans. So then it makes sense to me then that the reason why Christianity sees things like Ascended Master doctrine as demonic or of the dark side, a deception, is because at one point that was a way for humans to get closer to God. So that's a strength of humanity, like astrology might have been, or numerology, or Kabbalah, or any kind of secret tradition that you can point to. Magic in general is seen as taboo on the Christian side. So it would make sense to me that if we had an enemy, if humanity had an enemy that was blocking us towards ascension, it would usurp all those different avenues to God because those were our strengths. And then it would try to attack our weaknesses. And what's one of the biggest weaknesses that we have, humans have? Temptation, right? And so just a real quick illustration of this in ufology, which I think there's a huge crossover between Ascended Masters, demons or fallen angels, and aliens. Huge crossover, big gray area there. There's this being called Semyase that came to talk to Billy Meyer in the early 70s in Switzerland. And Semyase, if those who study extra biblical books like the Book of Enoch will recall, that name is from the leader of the fallen angel, right out of the Book of Enoch. Semyaza is Semyase. So if, and the Bible teaches that Lucifer will appear as an angel of light and come bearing gifts. And so that's exactly what you see with Semyase is not only does this alien from the Pleiades supposedly have the name of the leader of the fallen angels from the Book of Enoch, but it's been offering gifts to humanity for 50 years through Billy Myers, through J.J. Hurtak, the Book of Knowledge and Keys of Enoch, through Dr. Fred Bell, Rays of Truth, Crystals of Light is that book. And the technology that she's offering to raise consciousness, to clean up the pollution, to anti-gravity stuff and high-tech, for UFO, I see those as all bearing gifts. So I think we're in the middle of a huge deception right now, not to discredit ascended master stuff or anything else. I just think whatever was a strength of humanity has been usurped by the dark ones. And this is why the Christians say Jesus is the way, because that, to them, the only path that's uncorrupted is through their protocols. So that's kind of how I see it. Personally, I've sided with that stuff with Jesus because I think that's the safer bet. I think with ascended masters, I think I opened myself up to too many different things, and knowing how I may not be totally connected to my heart, I have trouble with discernment. So I'm kind of hedging against my own ability to discern or my ability to be deceived, which I think is very high. I think that's very high for humanity in general. Other people say, no, I can tell instantly if something's dark or light with my heart. God bless those people. They're probably a little more developed than me. So that's my take on that split between ascended masters and Christianity. And but even the ascended masters say Jesus is a pretty high being. So either way you look at it, Jesus is like right up there. So I'm like, that's me. I talk to Jesus when I have trouble. So yeah.
Level 9.
Okay. My turn. So that's a lot to digest. I tend to go through life, and I understand we're in a polarity. We're in this dichotomy. And I follow the law of attraction and action, right? And so I focus on the light, love, consciousness, spirituality. I pay attention to when I'm showing up victim, because when I show up victim, then I get the victimizer shows up, right? And there's people that like to throw you into the polarity. So you act out the opposites with each other. So I become very conscious of not going into the dark side of the force, to stay focused on the light. But through my life, I've encountered things that you might say are like demonic. For example, when I was 15, I had a best friend living with me at the time, and she was having a problem with her stepfather. He was trying to molest her. So we invited her to come live with us. And there's a stairwell in the house that my sister owns, and it seems to be a portal, interdimensional portal. And my mother had it locked, and she said, don't ever open this door. Don't ever open it. And we were going, why? So my mother went to church religiously every Sunday. So we knew when she was going to be out of the house. So her name was Miriam, and she went down and she unlocked the door and she opened it up. And now I'm in bed. We used to stay up till 3, 4, and then I'm sleeping in, and I hear this psychic scream. It wasn't a physical scream. It was a psychic scream. And I ran down, and she was in the bathroom, which is on the far end of the kitchen. I said, what's going on? She goes, look. And I turned around, and the demon in Poltergeist, it was in the kitchen, and it had come from the stairwell, and it was all snarly and dripping snot, and everything was swirling around the room, and loose things were flying, even some heavier things. So my mother, who was in church, stood up, and my father was an usher. He was a deacon. And she said, Bill, take me home right now. Because she didn't drive. She never drove. And so he always obeyed my mother. And he took his wife home, and she just said, let me out here. So she jumped out of the car and ran up the steps, and she ran to the back end of the house where the kitchen was. And somehow, I'm sitting on the floor, and I'm just like, my eyes wide open. I'm just watching this go on. And she somehow, with her force, she threw the demon energy back into the stairwell, and she slammed it. She used to keep a dryer in front of the stair, so you couldn't get in there. And she pushed it. She got really strong when she was upset. and push it back there. And by that time, Miriam had emerged from the bathroom, and she came over and she says, "I told you kids not to open that door." Now, for years, I thought I was just crazy. That's like when something is way out like that, you know, you just go, I must have been on some really powerful drugs that I didn't even know existed back then. I was just a kid. But years later, my friend, we started sharing stuff, and she wrote to me about it. And I, you know, was just shocked when she said, "Oh," I said, "that was real." She goes, "Yes, that's what happened. That was real." And so, you know, when you have trauma like that, your mind, it's called a kune. You don't want to remember it. You tend to stuff it down, and you go, I don't know how to process that. I don't know what to do with that. I'm a little kid going to school in Avalon, Pittsburgh, and you know it's the '60s, and I'm just having fun. I don't want to deal with that crap. So that's kind of been my whole life, because I think the polarity is there for us to learn, grow, evolve, become conscious, and ascend and become enlightened. So the polarity exists because if it's all just love and light, love and light, love and light, there's not enough to get us on track to learn what we need to learn. And so it's like the hero's journey. We have this polarity, so we get to be who we choose to be. We get to be the hero. We get to play the victim, the villain. We get to play everything, all the characters in play. And by going through that lifetime after lifetime, we eventually get the lessons, and we know what it's like to feel, you know, those horrendous things and those good things and those highs and those lows. And in between life, we analyze that. We go, well, you know, I'm sorry I was mean to you. I'm sorry I killed you. You know, whatever you did to each other, you get to look at that and you go, okay, we're gonna try a different approach, and we're gonna go back into these lifetimes. We're gonna run across, you know, with each other, and let's do it again better. We'll do it differently. So we evolve and grow. So that's what my understanding is, because I'm a systems analyst. I'm always looking at systems, and it's not logical. It doesn't compute. I'm an Aquarian, right? I'm kind of like a little Spockette. So I'm trying to, you know, reconcile all this with, you know, being alive, being the participant, being the witness on this journey, and being every character in play, and then end up, who am I at the highest level? Who are we? Who are the three of us, right? So I guess we'll pass that to. This whole thing's reversed. Here. So
Back to me.
Through Bret, and I can't come out to Theresa. There we go. There we go. Okay. Back to you, Theresa.
Okay. Well, the non-physical reality is that we don't necessarily want to understand what we can't see. That there's tangible and intangible. And I taught this class back when my daughter was alive. God bless her soul. I'm sure she's with us today too. But there are beings that we love, and we materialize them here. I've materialized 4 myself, 4 children, and one's passed over already. But she got cancer, and we couldn't get hold of one little. They said it was foreign. It was alien to her body, and it was stuck down in her tailbone. She had myelodysplastic syndrome from painting and breathing in the pain and the chemicals, and washing with benzene that's in the chemicals that we have on the planet. Now, one thing that's changing about our non-physical reality is the fact that we're recognizing in science, which is empirical, and world religions were always based on a lot of faith, hope, charity, and passing down through our folk art, myths, legends, the stories that came from those of old or ancient wisdom. And so the new era, the new age, was about new thought teachings and how we could take what was lost in time, space, reality, and gravity high. I don't know how that got on. Thank you, Bret, for letting me see that. I don't know how you did that, but thank you. Uh, yeah. So there's a lot of magic in the power of 3 and what we do. And so the magic that we're putting out there of the power of 3 and the TJ3B is the fact that people can look at us, see that we are physically showing up in 3D, and they're probably still on the planet seeing this, but we don't know who else. And that's the magic of the unexplained. Who else is watching us right now? And how many levels of us interdimensionally are there? Who's to say empirically, because they can't prove or disprove, that thoughts aren't things? Yes, ma'am.
knows the answer. Who is watching us? I'm trying to get it the right way. There we go. Who is that? Theresa J. Morris. Who's watching us? Who? So I like to talk about the aliens. What about the aliens? Right?
Those above and our own I am, because the I am came
Are they? Are
from the
some of
ascended
them,
master philosophy, and a lot of people
we
don't.
have an inner Earth
Yeah,
society?
we have all of these are just simple ways of
Mhm.
keeping the flame or the faith or the history of what we have in energy spin up and spin down, just like a tornado or a wormhole. You know, if you watch some of our famous scientists, they study gravity and thoughts of things, and our own governments have learned to control our weather. But, you know, we're looking at aliens and those on the seabed and those in space, and that's part of our job as custodians on the planet, is not to just only involve those places where men in the past have had wars or lived, you know, in the drier parts or in the mountains or near the seashores. But it's in our era, up to 2050, where we're going to start recognizing those that come and have
Well,
before.
let's talk about that. What do you think is the future? Are we going to get disclosure between now and 2030? What does disclosure mean? Let's kind of ground this because we're up here.
We are disclosures,
What
but
is, yes? So we're disclosure, but have
no politics.
particulars, because you sent me a long email of all the people you've met. My nose is itching.
Well,
I
wherever you want to go with Brett,
a reason why
I'm human.
we've all interacted with all these characters in our play, and each, it's kind of like the hero's journey, as you're on the journey, you gather your allies. So we have
Yeah.
all allies, and then you fall as you failed, and all of us are, whether we're talking to each other every day or not, we're all connecting the dots. We've got pieces of, so I'm looking for this UFO people field to come together with some real concrete answers, and you know, like say we're developing the atomic bomb. You know, we would be more coordinated. We would be more, you know, orchestrated. We would know. We would be more scientific or something. And we're all kind of just loosey goosey out there, and you know, writing our books. But and then there's a degree of that of cooperation at these conferences, but it's still talking heads, talking heads, talking heads, and then we go home. We never continue the conversation about the dots. So what I want to try to do in this show is connect the dots and see if we can come up with some instead of talking abstractly all the time. Let's you know, connect the dots, and what are we actually doing here, Brett? Let's ask Brett. Brett,
Brett,
what
what
are
are
we
we
doing
doing
here?
here?
What are we doing here? God, if we only knew the answer to that, we'd probably be able to get a lot further along. But what it seems to me is, you know, I've studied law quite a bit, and all
Yeah.
law is based on contracts. And so, and then you add the old adage, as above, so below. So if it's all about contracts here, it's probably about contracts in the spirit world as well. And so I try to look at the history of humanity and the situation we're in today through that lens.
Well, isn't that Scientology, though? Contracts for billions and millions, signed contracts.
So, okay.
Well,
I'm not an expert on Scientology. I know a little bit about Scientology,
when you're in a
but I think,
relationship, you have an agreement. It's like many contracts is, yeah,
yeah,
you have an
contracts
agreement.
take many different forms, treaties, agreements, you know, and so spells are a kind of a contract. I could get into a whole talk about magic and how magic is really a series of contracts. And there's always four ways to respond to a contract. Two are in honor, two are in dishonor. If you want to argue with the contract or stay silent, you're in dishonor. If you want to agree to the contract or counteroffer, those two are in honor. And so I think basically this is what's happened to humanity, that humanity, because we've been pushed off center and out of alignment with God, no matter what tradition you might study, that we've been in a place where we've been offered contracts by other beings, whether they be aliens or dark beings, or aliens and dark beings in conjunction with each other, working through humans, have offered, you know, in particular, I would say humanity in general, in various ways, but in America, we call it the Greada Treaty, where supposedly Eisenhower agreed to a certain kind of exchange, a contract with, some say gray aliens, some say Pleiadians, There's like 5 or 6 different kinds of species that supposedly Eisenhower talked with on the tarmac in 1954. Some say that was the Antarctic Nazis with their aliens that were there, and that's why we have this kind of thing with Antarctica right now. That's a whole nother discussion.
That's where we split in the ufology at COVID-19, by the way. We split up the ufology at that intelligence. But go on.
Okay. So my personal take is that humanity's been offered certain contracts that we agreed to in honor, and now we're bound by those terms. And representatives of the masses, like a president, say representing everyone, 300 million plus people in America, or maybe Gorbachev representing how many 100 million people in Russia, example, Xi in China. There's been various deals with these leaders that speak for all of humanity collectively. And I think we've made agreements with the wrong beings. And so because of that, the real good beings, the ascended masters, the angels, God, even God himself, will back off from us, because while God created us, God also gave us free will. And so if we want to make these choices on more of a difficult path, and allow the other side, as Janet said, we're in a dual reality, and allow that other side to teach us, personally, I think that's a tougher path, but that's the path that humanity collectively has chosen for itself. So Janet mentioned 2030 before. I think that the dark side has planned a kind of a peak or crescendo by 2030, that by 2030 human beings would be subjugated in such a way, a magical way, where maybe not everyone would recognize that they would think that depopulation and the kind of protocols that the Agenda 2030 it wants to implement by 2030, the year 2030, that would be the way to go. And so just like all contracts have to have all the participants willing. There has to be full disclosure, a meeting of the minds, and the people that are involved in the contract have to willingly give themselves to the contract. And so a friend of mine, Jordan Maxwell, describes society as itself a magical ritual. So by us participating in that ritual, we are allowing the dark side to endlessly tax us, fine us, and fee us. And they're taking our Federal Reserve notes out of us, speaking for, in America or in the Western world. Those Federal Reserve notes represent our spiritual energy. And so we're allowing this to happen to us. We've agreed to it. So I personally think that whether it's Jesus or ascended masters or benevolent ETs or all the above, or people from the hollow earth, Shambhala or Telos under Mount Shasta, whatever the situation actually is, humanity needs to make a different choice for itself so that we can clean up all this crap we have with money and banking, with this all caps name, and it's like a voodoo doll for each individual. And if we agree that voodoo doll is us, then all that darkness through statutes and codes and a whole other myriad of levels, we're giving permission for that to affect us. So humanity needs to wake up to the ritual that's going on, the ritual of society, as Jordan Maxwell nailed. I'd recommend all the viewers to go watch Jordan Maxwell stuff. He really nails it. And as people wake up, and I know people are waking up in America, especially to the law side of it, where they're choosing a different tax status, where they realize that being a resident is our agreement to have all this stuff affect us legally, so that they can move forward. They're just an offer to contract. So the position of strength, one of my teachers, Gordon Hall, showed me, always the position of strength is the counter offer. And so what humanity needs to do is say, whoa, we didn't have full disclosure to this societal ritual. We didn't have full disclosure to the contracts that we're supposedly involved in. And now we want to counter offer. And we can do this at any time. Spiritually, we can do this at any time. This is why you'll see NFL players agree to a 10-year, $100 million deal 1 year, and then the next year they're renegotiating, because you can always counter offer based on leverage that you might have. So as humanity wakes up, it has more leverage, has more awareness of its own self. And once this, I think it's snowballing at this stage. So that's my hope for humanity. I think that's where we're at right now. It's going to be playing out between now and 2030. I think by 2030, things are going to have to change for the dark side, because too many people are waking up.
We're working at the United Nations level, and you could say all this happened after World War II, but they've had a meeting of the minds, and you can look it up. I can send you the PDF if anybody wants it. I got into it today about the world changes, and of course, in space and the seabeds, and economically all the things that affect this world and those that are making the decisions with us and for us. But most of the time when we talk about lawyers, and I worked for lawyers since I was 15 and 16 when Chris Kraft at NASA, and we met legally across the street from NASA. And then I went to work for Newton B. Schwartz, attorney at law, John Hill, plastic surgeon, and Grady Hallman, heart surgeon, and the one that was great in music. But I saw then when they had the meeting of the oil industry and banking, I became very educated very quickly about how the world works. And I understand when Obama came in, and a lot of the countries were disenchanted with us because it's seen behind the curtain and our loans and the way that we've done large corporations in and out of other countries and what they come in to plan to be to help, and they never do. So, I can understand how on the planet they have like what Janet calls dualism in the society we're working with. But the one that the three of us talk with is supposed to be around spirituality and our souls and how we're going to the next level with extraterrestrials, knowing about UFOs and UAPs. So there's those not of Earth origin, and there's beings and the thoughts that come into our head. Most of the people, Bret, that you talk about are the people that really aren't educated. You were very fortunate to have met Harold and to have been in one of his students in that. But that's in California. I don't know if you studied all federal laws, but I've always worked under U.S. Code. I've always worked for the U.S. government since I was 16 years old, around the government contractor. Janet worked as a government contractor. And those of us, we always think we're doing good and for the betterment of humankind and for the future and law enforcement. Now, the world is changing because the government and the plates and the ways that we do business is the weather. They realize there are some changes, and we're not going to be able to do business like we have around Egypt and the Panama Canal. Quite frankly, trade is at a stop. There's trucks sitting everywhere with lots of backup products from that we made in America are from China, and it's still happening since COVID-19. So we've got to catch up. We've got to get through inflation. A lot of people don't understand inflation. A lot of people where I've lived, the mass does not understand how laws are done. They don't understand in America how the different congressmen and the different senators and all the people in office are talking about things that they have no idea, or they're getting padded with money from the back end by big corporations or people that come and lobby, the lobbyists. There's a whole level of understanding in law and how the system works in every country. But right now we have wars and rumors of wars, which, if you keep up with the news, Iraq and Iran bombing Israel. And that's a very big concern because our country is based on a religion that was built on the Abrahamic faith of Abraham, Isaac, Abraham, meaning Abrahamic is the Jews, and the Catholics and the Christians and Muslims, Christians, and Jews is, I think, the way we say it. But world religions is a way of life, and if they all become corrupted, they've come and gone. There's so many world religions I studied that have came and gone through time. They're just ended, and we're in one of those epochs right now with the Ascension Age following afterwards, where we're going into AI and thoughts or things. But we're going to see, and I've already seen them, you have beings walking around with no soul. So this is going to be something we've got to address, because it was the one thing I didn't want to do was talk about AI, ET, and the beings that I was going to be working with in my lifetime that have no soul. So here it is. I'm doing it. And Janet, you know what I'm talking about.
I mean, I met some people that it's very strange when you meet them, because you kind of like you're your heart goes because you're looking at them and they don't have. Yeah, it's like a shock. You're going, what's wrong? And you realize that oh, they don't have a soul. And then you don't want to offend them because maybe they don't know they don't have a soul. And you have to keep a straight face. And that's happened several times. I'm not going to go into the incidences, but Theresa and I have shared that. But, what does that mean? Is the potential becoming conscious in every being, whether you're soulless or not? What is souls only certain people get? It doesn't make sense. It's illogical. If you are alive and everything's from God and everything's from source, and of course, everything has the light somewhere within them.
The ghost in the machine is a philosophy. You have your mind outside of your body, the body-mind condition.
They didn't know that they were machines. And I think it was somebody there really knew what they were talking about when they did that series. I recommend rewatching it because we're right now in that. That was 20 years ago. We're in AI. But, you look at like Sophia and a lot of the other, they go, well, of course I'm human too. They seem to at least be able to, identify with emotions. Even Data, I remember Data from Star Trek. He wanted to be human. So I really don't like to even demonize this Theresa. Wait till you come out. I don't even like to demonize.
You don't like to demonize Theresa.
I don't like to demonize anything. I see good. I see God in everything. I mean, I even I really have empathy for things. Like, don't throw that away, or let's recycle it. Let's, because there's love that went into everything that was built. Somebody designed that. Somebody was the artist or the engineer that created it. And here's these beings that are, they're like Pinocchio. They're our children, and there's a lot that goes into these things. I don't think everything is evil. I mean, if I went through everything is evil,
there's chaos.
I couldn't wake up in the morning. I couldn't get out of bed. I just sit there under the covers and go, oh my God, everything's evil. So well, we only get like 50 to 100 years on this planet. I don't want to waste my time too much in the dark side of the world. Yet, no matter what, it's like we have wars and rumors of war, and then you turn on TV and there's all this stuff happening, and you're talking about all our goods and products are sitting there in these ports, and they can't get through the ports, and but really, what's essential and what's just materialism.
We're blessed to sit where we are and not have to worry about bombs coming over for many people. But, we still have to say our prayers, and thoughts are things. So the thing is about non-physical is what are we thinking and how are we bringing the awareness to other beings, because people are tuning into us and the three of us together. And that's the magic of what we do as beings. Bret, it's your turn. How do you want to wrap all this up? We've got about 8 minutes.
We got 8 minutes, 7 minutes left.
All right. So, take a page out of our old dear friend Harold's book. Harold really, and Harold and I would take the Christian perspective. Harold would take the Ascended Master perspective, and we would go at it. and I just had the best times talking with Harold. But a page out of his book right now is transmuting all of our negative energy. Since we lack discernment, I think in general as humanity, especially as a group, what really we can do for all this is to work and get our own houses in order and do the deep spiritual work that we are drawn to do. It's not a race. We're all in this. We all have our own levels that we're at and our own ability to self-perceive and increase our self-awareness. But that would be my advice. That's what I'm going to do, is I'm just going to continue to work on myself and pray that this situation on earth is going to work itself out, that we get to a place where we don't need this duality, where we can just live in peace and harmony and be okay with that. So to Janet's point earlier, man, I could see humanity living for millions of years, let's say in a golden age, and maybe it got bored.
Yeah, that's the series.
Having the dark side was an appealing idea to them because it provided a change up of the routine. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure exactly, right? But I could see that could be the case, right? I don't know it is, but I'm open to that. I'm just open to all kinds of stuff because I know I don't really know And that's why I pray to Jesus. So if something goes wrong, I pray to Jesus. When I want someone to be helped, I pray to Jesus. That's just my thing.
That's
It's
my
not for
thing.
everybody, but that's why there's so many different spiritual disciplines. But I've had success with that. And so I'm going to continue to do that and work on myself and
Healing.
try to be the best person I can be, so that if I get called into action in some kind of a situation as the hits the fan, which it looks like it's going to do at some point here before 2030, that I can act in the best way possible for the greatest good and help my fellow human beings, and I guess let the chips fall where they may after that. I mean, what else can I do?
Well,
Yeah,
go ahead, Janet.
then do you. What I realized at 70 years of age, I've got all these people that are they're in the last stage, right, all around me, because I'm on the younger end of this baby boomer generation. I've got an older brother, older sister. My sister's got dementia, so I have these opportunities to be kind. That's what the world is delivering. Like, what do I choose today? Can I get short-tempered, angry, impatient, or okay, I'm just going to stop, breathe. I'm going to see how can I be kind to these people that have been in my life, and and they may have done good or bad or ugly things. I don't care at this point. I've got to be the nicest I can, and I'm here in my part, which many people have to contribute, but to try to give them their last few years to be nice, peaceful. And I see your sister Brenda, who's on. Hi, Brenda. She is so generous. She's such a good person, and it's easy to demonize someone else and get mad. And I'm never going to talk to them again. But it's like, no, I'm not. I don't care what they did 20 years ago. Right now, I'm going to open my heart and be nice to. And it's not that I've got all this money to pass out or anything like that, or even all that time. But the people that God sends me, so to speak, I'm going to be the kindest that I can be. And the animals too. I have a lot of animals, and I just go, okay. And they want attention. Everybody wants attention. So I slow down for, 5 minutes. Okay, kitty, what do you want? And I look at my cat, and I love all these people unconditionally. I think that's a lesson for life. Not just ascension, but can you learn how to love unconditionally? And that doesn't mean, being a doormat and letting people, having firm boundaries. But in the end, you can say, I love, whoever you're saying is your enemy. I love you unconditionally, because if you didn't have an enemy, you really, like you said, you wouldn't have that much to do, right? Right now, we are, for some reason, are in the polarity paradigm, and we need that examination. I am not that, I'm good, so I'm not that, right? We need the polarity within ourselves to help define ourselves, help us define who we are. Anyway, that's kind of my concluding thoughts.
Thoughts are things, folks. And if
Yeah.
you did anything else from this today, we've got all kind of levels of talks and topics we want to cover. And we're learning to talk to each other and have a narrative between the three of us. But we've had 12 years of doing this already in a UFO ET arena that got split up at COVID. A lot of companies went under and a lot of events went under, and we just don't have the money to travel anymore like we used to. So if you'd like to be a part of us and our group, it's Open Source Intelligence. It's on YouTube. I've got ACO Club, Psychic Channel Network.
What books can they buy, Theresa? What book are you promoting this week?
Oh, this week I'm promoting my last book, Allied Command Odyssey. And that's the one that's available on Amazon. You can get it for less than $3 if you want just the ebook on Amazon. $3.17, I think it is. I looked it up today. Janet's supposed to show me how to put those books on my own website. We'll KDP Publishing, if Brenda's listening. But, we're all humble beings, folks. We're going to die. We know we're born, we live, we die. And my mother taught me we are all authors of our own life.
There is going to be a generation where we don't. So,
how do you do that?
What will you do if you live forever? How will you spend your days? How will you be if you live forever? And that's what the Anunnaki are here to teach us. Yes. We have that DNA. They shut that off, but somebody's going to discover, I'm going to put that DNA back on. And
they're going to put it back in.
500,000, 1 million years old. So, live today like you're going to die tomorrow, but live today like you're going to live forever. So, Bret, what book are you promoting?
My forthcoming book is called Agents of Ascension. Book 1 is called UFO PR, and it's about how public relations has controlled the UFO narrative. And it's basically about how there's a dark side versus a light side. Light side wants us to go to ascension. The dark side's blocking us from ascension and trying to turn us into an ever perpetuity machine where they can just constantly feed off us in this magical ritual of society. And we need to stop that. So that's the book. It should be out in a couple months, and I'm gonna blow it up everywhere. So hope everyone buys it. But that's what I'm promoting right now, and you can all find me on Facebook.
I'll buy it, Bret.
Yes. And I've got 2 series that I'm working on: The Dragon at the End of Time and the Anunnaki series. We have 6 books, and I have 4 so far in the Dragon book, and I'm about 270 pages in my called Cosmic Rights. So I'm starting to wrap it up, call it a day, and then go do another book. But I got approached, and I don't know if this is a scam, probably it's a scam, but it kind of inspired me. This guy, 2 different people approached me, and they said, "We want to buy the rights for your book for a movie, and we'll give you at least $300,000." So one of my fantasies was getting this series, the Anunnaki books that we're working on, produced into it'll be better than the Avengers. It'll be better than X-Men. It's gonna because the Anunnaki story is the story of humanity. It's our story, and we can talk about all these other beings, but Theresa, come back. The Anunnaki have their DNA, and they have, we are their children. So of all this, sure, there's grays and there's but we are the Anunnaki. So it'd be great. That's the precursors of the biblical stories, or the Anunnaki stories. And you can see, if you examine those, how these stories got warped and changed, because religion is a control mechanism to control humanity. So is politics. So when you think that the polarity game is here to keep us in line, Bret's right. Keep us in line. Got to keep paying your taxes. Got to keep obeying the laws and the rules. You got to keep going to, their institutions, their churches, their whatever. So anyway,
in America,
and
it's a choice. We can still vote to go one way or the other.
At some point, you might wake up and become going to go, "Oh, this is the game." And it's like, now what do? You're still in the game, because you wake up and you still. What are you going to do? Stop buying groceries? No, you still gotta. You're in the system, and so how do you get it? How do you get above that game? Anyway, I'm going to stop now, because we are at 102. Aloha.
Well, beware of what you said about the food and water, because that's gotten to be very expensive in America and around the world. So we've got to change that, folks, together. So all of you with love and light, come back and visit us next week, and hang in there with us. We'll be back.
Our Fuentes next week?
Oh, I don't know. She's coming back sometime. One of us in our group, our spiritual community. Okay. Anybody else out there? Was it Chris?
Contact us. I'm Janet Lessin at Gmail. Theresa, what's your email? Contact us if you, or somebody.
TJ Morris Show.
I won't be here next week. I have a very important.
I'll produce it.
You guys have to carry on without me, but I'll be back.
I may be buying new equipment, but I'll produce. Okay. It could just be the signal.
You need
Thank you, everybody. See you next week.
Thank you, Bret.
Love, aloha.
Thank you, Janet. Thank you, TJ.
Thank you, everybody. Love and light.
Bye.
Stay prayers.
Bye.
Healing.
Now.
Blessings and healing. Namaste.
Bye.